The morning sun painted the sky orange and red as Governor Lee Jun stood on the tall observation tower of New Terra's main city. Below him, strange ships were coming down from space. These ships looked dangerous, like metal sharks with sharp edges and dark windows. They landed on the big metal platforms with loud noises that made the ground shake. Commander Taekyung stood next to the governor. His hands were tight on his weapon belt, and his face showed worry. "Sir, I really don't like this plan. Something feels wrong about these aliens." Jun let out a long breath. He felt the same worry, but he could not show it. 3 days ago, ships from the Velkan Empire had arrived at their planet. The aliens said they wanted to start something called a cultural exchange initiative. They wanted to take human children to their home planets far away in space. They promised the children would get the best education in the galaxy. The governor knew about the Galactic Peace Accords. These were special rules that all planets had to follow to keep peace in space. For 2,000 years, humans had followed these rules perfectly. They never fought wars or used weapons against other species. If they refused the Velkans now, it would look like humans were being hostile and breaking the peace. In the big square below, 200 children were saying goodbye to their families. The children were between 8 and 16 years old. Some were crying, some were trying to be brave, and some looked excited about their adventure. The parents held their children tight, not wanting to let them go. Young Min Jun, who was only 10 years old, held his mother's hand very tight. His fingers were white from squeezing so hard. His older sister So Young, who was 14, stood straight and tried to look brave. But Jun could see her hands shaking as she hugged her little brother. "I will be back soon," So Young whispered to Min Jun. "I will learn many things and tell you all about the stars." Min Jun started crying. "I don't want you to go. Please stay with me." Their mother, Mrs. Kim, knelt down and hugged both children. Tears ran down her face, but she smiled. "You must be good children and learn everything you can. Make us proud." The Velkan delegation stood nearby, watching the human families with their strange eyes. The aliens were much taller than humans, with skin that looked like blue crystal. They had 4 eyes each, and their faces never showed any feelings. They watched the crying and hugging like scientists watching animals in a lab. Dr. Hyo Young, the best children's doctor on the planet, had decided to go with the children. She was a kind woman who loved children more than anything. She had no family of her own, so she thought of all the colony's children as her own kids. As she walked toward the alien ship, she stopped next to Governor Jun. She spoke very quietly so only he could hear. "I will watch over them every moment. I promise I will bring them all back home safely." Jun nodded and put his hand on her shoulder. "Thank you, Doctor. Their parents trust you." The Velkan ships were huge inside. The children looked very small as they walked up the metal ramps. Some children waved to their parents. Others were too scared to look back. The alien doors closed with a sound like thunder. From the observation decks around the landing area, hundreds of parents watched their children disappear into the dark ships. They pressed their faces against the glass windows, waving until their arms hurt. Many mothers were crying so hard they could barely stand. Commander Taekyung spoke into his radio. "All children are aboard the vessels. Repeat, all 200 children are now on the alien ships." The ships started to glow with blue light. They rose up from the platforms very slowly, making a humming sound that hurt people's ears. Then they moved faster and faster until they looked like bright stars in the sky. In just a few minutes they were gone, disappeared into the dark space between the stars. The parents stood in the square for a long time, looking up at the empty sky. Some were still crying. Others held each other tight. Everyone felt like something terrible had just happened, but they did not know what. Far away on Earth, the Human Council was meeting in their big white building. These were the leaders who made decisions for all humans in space. President Kang Soo-jin was reading reports about the Velkan exchange program. "The Velkans have taken children from 12 different human colonies," she told the other council members. "They say it is for education and cultural exchange." For 2,000 years, humans had been known across the galaxy as peaceful people. They called them the gentle wanderers because humans loved to explore new planets and meet new species, but they never fought wars. They had no big weapons, no warships, no armies. Other species trusted humans because humans always chose peace over fighting. The Human Council believed this was the right way to live. They thought that being peaceful made them better than species who still fought wars. Nobody on Earth knew what was really happening to the children. Nobody knew that Dr. Hyo Young was already trying to send emergency messages that never reached home. Nobody knew that this day would be remembered as the last day of humanity's great peace. The children were flying toward the center of the galaxy, toward planets they had never heard of, toward a fate that would change everything humans believed about themselves and their place among the stars. 3 months had passed since the children left New Terra. Every day their parents waited for messages from Dr. Hyo-young. She had promised to send reports about how the children were doing. But no messages came. The communication channels stayed silent. On Earth, President Kang Soo-jin was getting worried. She sent Ambassador Park Dong-ho to find out what was happening. Ambassador Park was a smart man who had worked with many alien species before. He took his assistant Kim Nari with him. Nari was young but very good at her job. The journey to the Velkan homeworld took 2 weeks. The planet Kethvar was huge and covered with tall crystal buildings that reached into the clouds. Everything looked clean and perfect, but something felt wrong. The air was too quiet, and there were no sounds of children playing anywhere. The Velkan officials who met them were very polite but cold. They smiled with their crystal faces, but their 4 eyes never showed any warmth. "Welcome to Kethvar," said the tall alien leader. "We are happy to show you our educational facilities." Ambassador Park felt nervous, but he tried to stay calm. "We would like to see the human children and speak with Dr. Hyo-young." "Of course," the alien said. "Follow us." They walked through long hallways made of white metal. The walls were so clean they could see their reflections. There were no windows and the air smelled like chemicals. Nari noticed that all the doors they passed had big locks on them. The aliens led them to an elevator that went down, down, down into the ground. It felt like they were going to the center of the planet. When the elevator finally stopped, they were in a place that looked like a hospital but scarier. Dr. Vexlar, the Velkan research director, was waiting for them. He was bigger than the other aliens with skin that sparkled like diamonds. His 4 eyes moved in different directions as he looked at the humans. "Welcome to our research center," Dr. Vexlar said. His voice sounded happy, like he was showing off something he was proud of. "The specimens have provided valuable genetic data. Your species' ability to adapt is most intriguing." Ambassador Park felt confused. "Specimens? What specimens?" "We came to see our children." Dr. Vexlar tilted his crystal head. "The human subjects, of course. Come, let me show you." They walked into a huge room filled with rows and rows of glass cells. Each cell was small, like a cage for animals. Inside the cells were things that had once been human children, but now looked like something from a nightmare. Nari gasped and covered her mouth with her hands. In one cell she saw Min-jun, the little boy who had been so scared to leave his mother. His head was covered with surgical scars, and strange tubes were connected to his brain. He sat in the corner of his cell, rocking back and forth and making soft crying sounds. In another cell was So Young, but she barely looked human anymore. Strange growths were coming out of her back like twisted branches made of alien flesh. Her eyes were different colors now, and she moved in ways that humans should not be able to move. "What have you done to them?" Ambassador Park shouted. His voice echoed in the terrible room. "We have been studying them," Dr. Vexlar explained, as if he was talking about the weather. "We wanted to understand how humans can live on so many different planets. So we mixed their DNA with DNA from other species. Very interesting results." Nari was crying now. She saw Dr. Hyo-young in one of the cells, but the kind doctor was barely recognizable. Her body had been changed too, with strange metal parts attached to her arms and head. She looked at Nari with eyes that still showed intelligence, but she could not speak. "This is monstrous," Nari whispered through her tears. "These are children. They trusted you." Dr. Vexlar seemed surprised by her words. "Monster? We study species without military capability. According to Galactic Law 847.3, beings from non-sovereign entities may be claimed for scientific research. Your people's pacifist nature legally classifies you as research specimens, not citizens." Ambassador Park felt like the ground was falling away under his feet. "What do you mean?" "Your species has no weapons, no armies, no power," Dr. Vexlar explained. "Under galactic law, that means you are not a real civilization. You are just animals that can talk. We can do whatever we want with you." Suddenly the air in the room changed. A huge hologram appeared, showing the face of Emperor Kethvar himself. The emperor was enormous, with skin like black crystal and eyes that glowed red. When he spoke, his voice filled the entire room. "Human ambassador," the emperor said, "your species has no weapons, no military, no power. You exist at the galaxy's sufferance. We will expand this program to all human colonies. Soon we will have millions of human specimens to study." Ambassador Park tried to speak, but no words came out. He realized that humans had been tricked. All these years they thought being peaceful made them safe. But it had actually made them targets. Suddenly Velkan guards surrounded them. "You will stay here as specimens too," Dr. Vexlar said with his cold smile. but Nari was fast. While the aliens were talking, she pressed a small button on her watch. It was an emergency beacon that would send a message to Earth. The message would take 7 days to reach home, but it would tell the human leaders everything. The guards grabbed Ambassador Park and Nari, but it was too late. The message was already flying through space, carrying the terrible truth back to Earth. In 7 days, humanity would learn that their 2,000 years of peace had not protected their children. It had only made them easy prey. The emergency beacon's message reached Earth exactly 7 days after Nari sent it. The signal traveled through space faster than any ship, carrying with it images and recordings that would change everything humans believed about themselves. President Kang Soo-jin was sleeping when her aide woke her up at 3 in the morning. "Madam President, you need to see this immediately," the aide said, his face white with shock. In the emergency meeting room, President Soo-jin watched the horrible recordings from the Vulcan research facility. She saw the children in their glass cages. She saw Min-jun with his scarred head and So-young with alien growths on her back. She saw Dr. Hyo-young trapped in a body that was no longer completely human. The president's hands shook as she watched. These were not just any children. These were human children. Someone's sons and daughters. They had been tortured and changed into monsters by aliens who saw them as nothing more than animals to experiment on. Within hours, the message spread to every human colony in space. On Mars, colonists gathered in the main dome and watched the recordings in horrified silence. On the mining stations around Jupiter, workers stopped their machines and stared at the screens. On distant frontier worlds, farmers and traders saw what had happened to the children and felt something they had not felt in 2,000 years. Rage. Pure, burning rage that made their blood feel like fire. President Soo-jin called for an emergency meeting of the Human Council. Leaders from every human world came together in the Great Meeting Hall on Earth. The hall had not been this full since the signing of the Great Peace 2,000 years ago. "We trusted them," President Soo-jin said, her voice echoing through the hall. "We believed that being peaceful would protect us. But they saw our peace as weakness. They took our children and turned them into experiments." The council members looked at the screens showing the survivors. Only 47 children were still alive out of the original 200. The rest had died on the alien operating tables. One council member stood up. He was an old man from the outer colonies. "What can we do? We have no weapons. We have no armies. We gave up war 2,000 years ago." That was when Admiral Choi Min-ho entered the room. Min-ho was 60 years old and had spent his life coordinating civilian transport ships. But his great-grandfather had been something very different. His great-grandfather had been the last commander of humanity's war fleets before the Great Peace began. Min-ho walked to the front of the room. He was tall and strong with gray hair and serious eyes. When he spoke, everyone listened. "We disbanded our fleets," Min-ho said. "We destroyed our weapons. We buried our military traditions because we thought we had evolved beyond the need for violence." The room became very quiet. People remembered stories their grandparents had told them about the old days, when humans fought wars among themselves and with other species. "But," Min-ho continued, "we never destroyed everything. We kept some things hidden just in case." Large screens around the room began showing old recordings from 2,000 years ago. They showed human warships fighting in space. They showed weapons that could destroy entire moons. They showed battles so terrible that whole star systems were left empty. The final battle of humanity's last war was the worst. Human fleets had fought against each other over some forgotten disagreement. The battle had lasted for months and killed billions of people. When it was over, the survivors looked at what they had done and made a promise. Never again would humans use their skill for war. "We became peaceful not because we were weak," Min-ho explained. "We became peaceful because we were too good at violence. We scared ourselves." President Soo-jin's aide, Lieutenant Commander Lee Yi-jin, was working at a computer terminal. She was young, only 25, but she was very smart with technology. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she accessed files that had been locked away for 2,000 years. "Sir," Yi-jin called out. "The automated shipyards, they're still operational. Dormant but functional." Min-ho smiled for the first time since seeing the recordings. "Show me." The screens changed to show hidden facilities on the dark side of Earth's moon. Deep underground, in places that did not appear on any maps, huge machines waited in the darkness. These machines had been sleeping for 2,000 years, but they were still ready to work. Yi-jin typed commands into her computer. Far away on the moon, lights began to turn on in the hidden factories. Machines that had been silent for millennia started to hum with power. "Activation codes are being sent to all human colonies," Yi-jin reported. The emergency systems our ancestors built into every settlement are coming online. Across human space, colonists received messages on their computers and communication devices. The messages contained codes and instructions that had been programmed by their great-great-grandparents. Suddenly, ordinary farmers and miners remembered that they were descendants of the greatest warriors the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Song Ji-woo, humanity's best scientist who studied alien life, made a discovery while reading the old files. She stood up and spoke to the council. The Velkans made one critical error in their assessment, Dr. Song said. They thought we became peaceful because we evolved beyond violence. But that's not true. We became peaceful because we were too good at it. The truth was simple and terrifying. Humans had not given up war because they were naturally gentle. They had given up war because they were naturally excellent at it. When humans fought, entire civilizations died. When humans got angry, planets burned. For 2,000 years, humanity had chosen peace. But now their children were suffering in alien laboratories. Now the choice was different. The sleeping giant was waking up, and the galaxy was about to remember why humans had once been feared across the stars. 6 months passed like a storm across human space. In hidden shipyards that did not appear on any galactic maps, something incredible was happening. The old machines were working again, building ships like the galaxy had never seen before. Admiral Minho stood on the bridge of the biggest ship in the new fleet. The ship was called New Terra's Vengeance, and it was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The ship was 3 kilometers long, covered in gleaming metal that seemed to drink in the light of stars. When other ships saw it, they felt afraid without knowing why. Around the flagship, 300 other ships moved through space like dancers in perfect formation. There were fast attack ships that could disappear from sensors. There were huge battle cruisers with weapons that could crack moons. There were small fighter craft that moved like angry wasps. Every human colony had sent ships and people to join the fleet. Farmers became soldiers. Miners became gunners. Teachers became pilots. They all had one thing in common. They were angry about what happened to the children. Captain Park Hyo-min commanded a ship called Silent Thunder. Her ship was special because it could become invisible to enemy sensors. Hyo-min was 35 years old and had been a peaceful cargo pilot before the war started. But her own daughter had been taken by the Velkans in the second wave of abductions. Captain, her weapons officer said, all systems are ready. The stealth field is active. Hyo-min nodded. Her crew was made up entirely of parents whose children had been stolen. They worked together like they had been training for years, even though most of them had never been on a warship before. Anger made them focused. Love for their children made them deadly. Lieutenant Jin-woo was only 20 years old, but he led the fighter squadrons like he had been born for it. His great-great-grandfather had been a famous pilot in the last human war. Jin-woo had never flown a military fighter before 6 months ago, but now he moved through space battles like he was dancing. The first real test came at a place called Proxima Junction. This was where many trade routes met like crossroads in space. A Velkan patrol fleet was there, checking ships and looking for more humans to capture. The Velkan fleet had 30 ships. They were big and powerful, with crystal armor that could stop most weapons. The Velkans thought they were safe because they had never seen humans fight before. Admiral Minho stood on his bridge and watched the enemy ships on his screens. All ships, this is Admiral Minho. Remember why we are here. Remember our children. Show them what happens when you hurt a human family. The battle began at exactly 1432 Galactic Standard Time. Jin-woo's fighters attacked first. They came out of hyperspace like shooting stars, moving so fast the Velkan sensors could not track them. The young pilots flew between the enemy ships, hitting weak spots with perfect accuracy. Captain Hyo-min's Silent Thunder appeared behind the Velkan flagship like a ghost. Her ship had been invisible, waiting for the perfect moment. The Velkans never saw her coming until her weapons lit up their ship like a firework. The larger human ships moved forward in formation. Their weapons were different from anything the galaxy had seen before. Human scientists had taken 2,000 years of peaceful technology and turned it into tools of war. Energy beams that could cut through crystal armor. Missiles that could think for themselves and find their targets. Commander Na-young watched the battle from the intelligence ship Data Storm. She was amazed by what she saw. How are we doing this? She asked her captain. It's been 2,000 years since we fought a space battle. How do we know how to move like this? Her captain was an old man who had studied human history. Look at how they fight, he said. Every move is perfect. Every attack hits exactly where it should. This isn't something they learned. This is something they remembered. Admiral Minho heard Na-young's question over the communication system. He smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Violence isn't something you forget, he said. It's something you choose not to use. The Velkin fleet tried to fight back, but it was like trying to fight a hurricane. The human ships moved together like they were parts of one giant machine. When one ship was attacked, 3 others came to help it. When the Velkins tried to run, human fighters blocked their escape routes. 14 minutes after it started, the battle was over. All 30 Velkin ships were destroyed or disabled. Not a single human ship was lost. Not a single human pilot was killed. The surviving Velkins sent emergency messages to their home worlds. The humans are not what we thought, they broadcast. They are not peaceful prey animals. They are predators pretending to be sheep. Across the galaxy, other alien species watched recordings of the battle. They saw how the humans fought with cold, precise anger. They saw ships that could become invisible and weapons that never missed their targets. Some species were horrified when they learned what the Velkins had done to human children. The Rigelian Republic sent ships to help the humans. The Centauri Federation offered to share intelligence about Velkin military bases. But other species remembered old stories about human wars. They remembered why their ancestors had been afraid when humans first came to the stars. These species began to choose sides, some with the Velkins and some staying neutral. The war that had started with 200 stolen children was growing into something much bigger. The galaxy was splitting into 2 sides. Those who supported the humans' right to protect their young, and those who feared what humans might do if they won. Admiral Minho looked at the wreckage of the Velkin fleet floating in space. This was just the beginning. 1 year after the first battle at Proxima Junction, the human fleet had grown into something the galaxy had never seen before. Admiral Minho's force now included over 2,000 ships. Many alien species had joined the humans after learning what the Velkins had done to the children. The Rigelian Republic sent their fastest scout ships. The Centauri Federation provided heavy battle cruisers. Even the mysterious Void Dwellers, who rarely spoke to other species, offered their ancient weapons to help rescue the human children. The final battle would happen at Kethvar, the Velkin homeworld. This was where the children were being held in the underground laboratories. This was where the evil had started, and this was where it would end. President Sujin had left Earth for the first time in her life to join the fleet. She stood on the bridge of New Terra's Vengeance next to Admiral Minho, watching as thousands of ships moved toward the crystal planet below. "Madam President," Admiral Minho said, "you should not be here. This is going to be dangerous." President Sujin shook her head. "Those children down there need to see that we came for them. They need to know that every human parent in the galaxy is fighting to bring them home." The battle for Kethvar was different from all the others. The Velkins had gathered their entire military around their homeworld. Massive crystal fortresses floated in space, bristling with weapons. The planet itself was covered with shield generators and defense platforms. But the human fleet was ready. Captain Yi-Jin commanded the rescue ships that would go down to the planet to find the children. She had trained for months, studying maps of the underground facilities and learning how to fight in narrow corridors. "All rescue teams, this is Captain Yi-Jin," she spoke into her communicator. "Remember, our mission is to save the children. Everything else comes second." The space battle lasted for 6 hours. Human ships and their alien allies fought against the Velkin defense fleets while rescue ships slipped through the fighting toward the planet below. Jin Woo, now promoted to squadron commander, led his fighters in protecting the rescue ships. Captain Hyomin's Silent Thunder used its invisibility to destroy the shield generators around the main research facility. Her crew worked in perfect silence, knowing that millions of people across the galaxy were counting on them. When the shields fell, Captain Yi-Jin's rescue teams landed on the crystal surface of Kethvar. They fought their way through Velkin guards and down into the underground laboratories where the children had been kept for over a year. The rescue teams used special equipment to cut through the alien metal doors. They moved quickly through corridors that smelled like chemicals and fear. Finally, they reached the main laboratory where the children were being held. Captain Yi-Jin was the first person to enter the chamber with the glass cells. What she saw made her cry immediately. The children looked like they had been through hell. Many of them did not look completely human anymore. In the first cell she found Minjun. The little boy who had been so scared to leave his mother was now covered in scars. The Velkins had replaced his eyes with strange mechanical devices that glowed blue in the dark. When he saw Yi-Jin, he crawled to the corner of his cell and trembled. Are you human?" Minjun whispered. His voice was different now, changed by whatever the aliens had done to his throat. Yi-Jin knelt down next to his cell and put her hand against the glass. Tears ran down her face as she looked at what had been done to this innocent child. "Yes," she whispered back. "We've come to take you home." It took the rescue teams 3 hours to free all the surviving children. Only 47 were still alive. The rest had died during the experiments. Each survivor had been changed in terrible ways, but they were alive. Dr. Hyo-young was found in a special cell deeper in the facility. The kind doctor who had promised to protect the children was barely recognizable. The Velkins had attached strange machines to her body and changed her brain. But when she saw the rescue teams, she smiled for the first time in over a year. So-young was found in the last cell they checked. The brave girl who had tried to comfort her little brother was now covered with alien growths that came out of her spine. But her mind was still sharp and her voice was still strong. The footage from the rescue operation was broadcast across the entire galaxy. Every civilized species saw what the Velkins had done to innocent children. They saw the glass cells, the surgical scars, and the mechanical devices attached to small bodies. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to watch the evidence and decide what to do. The Velkin delegate tried to defend his people's actions. According to Galactic Law 847.3, the Velkin said, "Species without military capability can be used for scientific research. We did nothing illegal." Then So-young was brought before the council. Despite everything that had been done to her, the 14-year-old girl stood straight and spoke clearly. She told the assembled aliens about the pain, the fear, and the experiments. She described watching her friends die on operating tables while alien doctors took notes. "They took us because they thought we were weak," So-young said. "They thought being peaceful meant we would not fight back. They were wrong." President Soo-jin stood up to address the council. "We thought being gentle made us weak," she said. "But gentleness is a choice, not a limitation. We chose peace for 2,000 years. Today we choose justice." The vote was unanimous. The Velkin Empire was dissolved. Its leaders were arrested and put on trial for crimes against children. New laws were written to protect the young of all species, and humans were given the job of enforcing these laws. 1 year later, Admiral Minho stood in a garden on New Terra. The rescued children were playing among flowers that had been planted to remember those who died. The survivors were healing slowly. Human doctors had learned how to remove most of the alien modifications, and counselors helped them deal with their memories. Minjun ran up to the admiral. The boy now wore special glasses instead of the alien devices, and he was learning to smile again. "Sir," Minjun asked, "will we have to fight again?" Admiral Minho knelt down and put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "I hope not, son. But if we must, we'll be ready." The galaxy now understood that humanity's peace had been a gift, not weakness. And like any gift, it could be taken away when their children were threatened.